All right, so this is going to be the goal, is to get us through this. Because I'm not going to be here next class, I want to make sure that we at least have this information to go take parts of our model at least and get them to the point where we can actually have them inside of Unreal and actually walk around and see our stuff. Okay, so that's going to be our goal by the time I get done with this lecture, is you can see that process of taking one of your models, preparing it, texturing it, and then getting it into Unreal. Okay, Unreal is free, so you can download it, install it on your computer. We are using, I believe in this classroom, 4.23. Whichever version we're using here, that's the one you want to use at home. I believe 4.24 is out, but it's not backwards compatible. So if you go and install 4.24 at home, try to bring it here, it won't open. Okay, so I'm just going to minimize that for a second. All right, this is Substance Painter. Again, it's a free one. We need to be able to get into this. This is where we're going to be doing our texturing at. Up until this point, all the texturing we've done has been just like flat materials. So metals, plastics, glass, that kind of thing, more architectural based. In this one, we can actually go through and actually paint onto surfaces exactly where we want stuff to happen. So, excuse me. So for this object here, I can make a layer, and I can go with my brush. I did that last class too. Pick a different color. And I can paint right on top of that. Okay, and that's what we want to do. So let's get to that point of being able to take one of our items and bring it in there. Whoops. There we go, there we go. Okay, so you can do this pretty much at any point. It doesn't matter if your entire scene is complete or not. Sometimes you kind of like getting that process of, I'm going to take a piece, do all the stuff to it, get it ready, get it in the game engine. And for me, that really motivates me to then do the next piece, and then do the next piece, and then what else am I missing from this environment kind of thing, okay? So that's what we want to do here. So this is sort of kind of where I left it off last time. I had these crappy screens, and I thought they really weren't really futuristic looking enough. So I rebuilt this one, which feels a little bit more, you know, slimlined. It has an arm that can actually articulate some if I needed to. Ideally, this would be like a piece of glass. The top bar there would be like projecting or hologramming down into it. So that's why we would have, you know, this one compared to that one, which is more like a TV screen where all the pixels will be behind it and lighting it up. Okay. Sometimes I'll model stuff, and I'll just leave it there in the background. Okay. I've also modeled this piece. I've also recessed some of these cables here. And I've also played with some different lighting configurations. Last time I showed this, I had kind of thicker, chunkier lights, and I really wasn't impressed with how they looked afterwards. It felt out of place, so I didn't delete it. I've hidden it. All my stuff that I'm kind of deciding on is on my meh layer. And if I go there, oh, there's my meh layer. Where's my other one? All right, it doesn't matter, but I had another layer. I don't know what happened to it, but that was my other light that I ended up not using. Okay. So now what I need to do is I need to start breaking this up into pieces that I will then take into Substance, and then take that into Unreal. Okay. What we want to do first is look for the pattern. Okay. So if I were to isolate just this piece here, I extruded this area right there. That didn't happen on all these, but ideally it would be the same thing. Okay. Each one of these areas would have one of these little boxes, one of these things, and then this is essentially that, okay? So my repetitive area is basically that, okay? So that's my pattern. So each one of my pieces, if I deleted all of this stuff here and I just saved those, that's what my pattern is going to be for that wall going straight down, okay? Just that one section. So what I'm going to do is take those pieces, I'm going to extract them, back to object mode, they're all by themselves, and I'm going to isolate them. Okay, so now they're all by themselves. If I decide to do anything to this, I need to be aware that it's going to be like side by side. So anything I do to this, I can't destroy this edge here or this edge there. If I destroy those, if I move those, if I do anything, it'll affect how the next one is going to be attached to it. So just as an example so you can see this, let's say that I added an edge loop here, and I grabbed this one and shoved it over. It looks horrible, I wouldn't do that, but let's say I did that. When I go to the next one, whoops, what are you doing? And I would duplicate this and slide it over, you'll see there's no way that this is going to line up perfectly because I have this big like jagged cut in there, okay? So you just want to be aware that whatever one edge looks like, this here, that I want to make sure that other edge has the same kind of look to it, okay? I also want to grab some of the other stuff. Let me go back to this. I'm going to grab this, and I'm going to grab that. Yep, that's it. So I'm including all of these as my main piece. Like these are the components of that wall, okay? And that is going to be duplicated over and over and over again. So I'm going to go into my front view. I lied. I'm going to go into my side view. There we go. And I need to make sure that this lines up perfectly with that. When we get into Unreal and we're duplicating this, it automatically will snap increments. So if I have this in a halfway point and I try to move it, it's going to not line up perfectly, and then I have to, do a lot more work to get it to line up perfectly. So I'm going to go to F8. There we go. So I'm grabbing the points. I'm going to grab these, go into wireframe, and I'm just going to snap this to that line. That lines up perfectly. I'll do the same thing on this side. Grab these, hold down X, and then grab the arrow just to snap it right there. Okay, so now that lines up those points perfectly with that direction. I want to do the same thing on top. I think they're already good though on top. Okay, so hold down X, snap it. Yeah, it was already good. And then the bottom, I believe, is also good. Yep, it's right on the line. Okay. Now, I don't need to worry about if I went to my front view. You'll see that we have this like weird angle there. The angle doesn't matter so much as long as I have my pivots in the right spot. So this should be fine the way that's set up. Okay, so I'm going to leave that the way that is. That's good there. Okay, let's say this, let me jump back to this. This thing here is kind of like a module piece. So let's say sometimes I do want to use it, sometimes I want to switch with something else. I could model different pieces and swap them out later if I decide I want to swap that out later. So I'm leaving it in there now. Same thing with this. If I decide to swap this out later with something else, as long as it's in that same spot, I should be good. But that edge is perfect. This edge is perfect. Okay? So that's good there. I'm going to move the pivot. So I'm going to go grab all my pieces, hold down D, hold down V, and then just middle click until I get it right at that corner. And then I'm going to hold down X and slide this over here. And then hold down X and slide it over there. Okay? Everything that I export, I'm bringing right to the origin. When I go into Unreal, Unreal will bring it in right at the origin. So if I have it way far away, my pivot still is over here at the origin, my item is way over here, very difficult to move the stuff. So bring those two things together, it'll be good. I'm going to delete history. You have a question, sir?
So what was the hotkeys you did to change the pivot point? It was
D is for pivot, and then V is snapping to point. And so I just moved that. Yep. Come on, there it goes. DV, there we go. Middle drag to get it to where I want it to be. And then hold down just X, and then move the whole shape right to the origin, right to that center spot. Okay, X is grid, so it'll snap it right to that grid line right there. Okay, so now that's in the right spot. Now if I were to try to take this and put this into Unreal, or into Substance to do any painting, it wouldn't work, okay? This is a 2D image over here. These are my textures. This is a 3D item. Right now, if I were to look at what this looks like in 2D, I'm going to go to the modeling menu, I'm going to go to UV, and I'm going to go to my editor. This is what it looks like in 2D. So that you can't see any of the shapes. Stuff is pretty much like right on top of each other. It's not going to work, okay? And just to test it out, oops. While I'm in the UV editor, it's automatically going to show me checkerboards, okay? So if I were to click off this, they go away. If I click back on it, you can see there's definitely a checkerboard, oops, inside here. So here's a checkerboard. You can see it looks like somewhat like checkers. They're blue. These are red. Let me turn off. There we go. And then this is also a checkerboard, but the UVs for it are totally like crazy, okay? So what we have to do is we have to tell Maya what the UVs look like so they're nice and flat, so when we put a texture on there, everything looks beautiful, okay? Just like every other software or every other thing we do in Maya, this can be very simple. If you keep it simple, it can be very complex if you keep it complex, okay? The idea here is think about what this would look like if this was in the real world and I needed to lay this flat, perfectly flat, okay? Or what would it look like if I wanted to put it on a piece of paper and cut it out and then be able to fold it into that shape, okay? However you want to picture it. So I'm going to start off with just this piece here, and then I'll work to the other more complex pieces. So this one, if we look at it, it has this edge right here, these faces here, and then it has this box extruding from it. So there's no way as one whole piece that we could ever just flatten this out, because what would happen is we basically crumble it, okay? Think of this tissue box here. If I'm going to take this tissue box and I'm going to make this flat, I can't just squish it because then I lose the sides. I'd have to unfold it, find the seams for it, and then I could find this area that would be perfectly flat, okay? So that's what we have to do to this. We have to cut it up and then put little seams in it, and that's where it'll be set up to be flat. Now, before I do any of that, I need to go to modify and freeze my transforms, okay? And I'm going to add my, not my OneNote. Actually, I will open OneNote. All right, I'm going to open up my OneNote just so you can see the process, because this is going to be the same exact thing for every single thing you ever UV lay out in your entire life. So step one is to freeze transforms. I guess I would say step one is to, yeah, I'm just going to say freeze transforms. I'm not including the other stuff. I'm not including moving the pivot. That's not really part of freezing the transforms. That's more of getting it into Unreal. Okay. So step one, we froze the transforms. That resets all of our translates, rotates, and scales back to their original settings. Step two, I'm just going to delete history just so nothing freaks out. Okay, delete. And if I go here and say this, oh, come on. And now we have actual numbers. Hooray. All right. So we deleted history. We froze the transforms. And then I'm going to go under UV, and I'm just going to say automatic. Okay? And this is the easiest way to get started on a surface like this. Okay? Now what this is going to do is it automatically will project different directions for every single piece of this. So imagine our box here, instead of us going through and saying, I want a seam right here, I want a seam right here, Maya is automatically saying everything facing this direction is a piece, everything facing this direction is a piece, everything facing this direction is another piece. So it's basically cutting it at every single one of these 90-degree angles, okay? Now that's what this is showing. Let's look at it flat. So if I go to my UV editor, do they look like squares? Who said no? Well, they are stretched, sorry. The projector is stretching it out vertically a little bit, okay? So good. You caught on. So then I'm going to automatic mapping. Okay, so they are stretched out on the projector. On my screen, they are not stretched out. So just squish everything with your eyes about 5%, I think, and that should be good. So that is laid out, okay? So as far as UVs go, this would work, okay? For that one shape, this whole thing of just going to automatic will work. Now, let's get into the rules of UV mapping, okay? The rules of UV mapping. And that sounds like a header to me, doesn't it? Boom. Okay. So rule number one, everything must be square. Okay, so as we lay out our UVs, every single one of these pieces, the squares must be square. They cannot be stretched out. You cannot have ones that are kind of like wonky. Now, there is a 1% margin of error here, so if they are slightly skewed, that's not a big deal. But we're looking for more of the obvious stuff. Okay, so number one, everything must be square. Rule number 2 is everything must be the same size. Okay? As we look at these squares, what we should be thinking about is resolution. Okay? If I have a 500 pixel by 500 pixel image, and I take that 500 pixel image and I stretch it out over a billboard, how pixelated is that going to be? How many pixels are when you print something, like typically how many pixels are you dealing with? How many dots per inch? 300, right? So if I take 500 pixels and I stretch it out the size of a billboard, I've basically taken a 2-inch image and stretched it out, okay? So when we see those squares, think of those as our resolution. The tinier the squares are, the more pixels we can fit in there, the more resolution we can add. The bigger they are, the less resolution we can add, okay? Now, when we get into Substance and we're creating textures and we're doing that, we can adjust the size, but we never want to go crazy with our size of this file just so that we can get a lot of detail when there's stuff we can do inside Maya to not do that, okay? And then the final rule is as few pieces as needed, okay? The first two are pretty obvious and they're pretty direct. Everything must be square, everything must be the same size. Those two things need to happen. The third one, as few pieces as needed, this is where we get into everyone is going to have something different, okay? Now, how many pieces do I have here? Let me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so I have 6 pieces for this item here, right? We can kind of look at the size of the squares too and see those look like they're pretty squarish squares. But I think I can probably get less squares, okay? If I were to take a box, pretend this is just a flat cube, there's no beveling or anything else. What is the fewest amount of pieces I could cut and have this be? Like, how many pieces is the fewest pieces I could have this? How many pieces? Correct, 1, right? So if I were to cut this in certain spots, I should be able to take this cube and lay it out flat, right? Probably how they made the box, right? It's one shape, they laser cut it, and then some other machine kind of folded it into the tissue box. So this kind of thing, I have a couple different ways I can do this. So I have basically a cube right there, a cube, so how many pieces should I be able to get this one into? 1, right? And then what kind of shape do I have here? Look at it from that side. We have a corner of a cube, right? So we should be able to get that into 1 piece as well. So how many pieces total should we have? 2, right? So we'll try it and see. So just like modeling, there's a million tools, and we're only going to stick to a few of them, okay? Number 1, the way we select stuff inside the UV editor is 2 things that we will typically grab. We either grab edges or we will grab UV shells. Vertices and UVs people get confused with. The UV is a texture coordinate, okay? It doesn't stand for anything. The U and the V mean nothing except for just 2 random letters they picked in the alphabet. If I grab the point right here and I try to move it, it'll move here, but it's not moving out there, okay? 2 totally different, separate things. If I go to vertex, I grab this and I move it, again, it moves out here, doesn't affect that, okay? So typically you're never going to use, or rarely would you use this. Typically you're going to grab the edge, which is going to be one of these, or you're going to grab the shell, which is going to be the whole piece, okay? So look at this outer piece. Our job is done with that one. That's already 1 solid piece. So we don't have to worry about that one at all. Let's look at this one, and we'll see if we can get this together. So I'm going to go to edge. And you'll see that as I move my mouse over each one of these edges, it'll actually highlight the shared edge, okay? Just like the tissue box, if I were to cut this edge here, even though I would have this face and that face, I have a shared edge that those 2 used to be part of. That's what I'm seeing. So I'm going to click on this edge. Shift right click still works. So we can go in here and get our popular menu items. And I'm going to say move and sew. And what that does is it takes those two edges and welds them together, so now they're one piece. So let's see if I can do that some more. So I'm going to grab that edge, move and sew. If I move this here, notice where the edge is picking up. It's picking up this inside edge right there. I wouldn't want to do that because that's like a separate piece, a separate direction. And if I did that and I moved and sewed, see how that's now laying on top of the other piece? We can't have that, okay? So let's throw that another rule into that too. No overlapping pieces. And I will put an asterisk there. Sometimes we will have overlapping pieces, but not very often. Okay, same thing here. There you go. So move and sew that. Grab this one, move and sew. All right, so now we have two things right here. So now we have two items, right? We looked at it, we said we can get two, boom, we got two. Sometimes it will not be that case. Sometimes, like for, let's say, a hand, you might break down the hand into each individual finger. And each finger broken down into the top of the finger, the bottom of the finger, and let's say a cap around the top of it, okay? So you might have a whole bunch of pieces for just your hand. Sometimes that's just how it goes. Sometimes, like for a head, you can get it all as one piece and it works fine. Sometimes it doesn't, okay? So now we need to fit them within this square, okay? So let's go back to this. So automatic mapping, let's combine pieces, move and sew. And then we have to shrink, or we have to resize, because it might be bigger, resize to fit the UV box. Must fit within the UV box. Okay. Inside of Maya, we have this box that's right there. Okay, so right here, this coordinate system, right from 0 here to 1 there to 1 here, down to here, over there. This box is the texture. If we go outside of that, we're jumping into two textureville, okay, where we would have half of our texture here and half of the texture there. We don't want that. Same thing here. This little bit sticking out will cause Maya or Substance to create two different textures, one for this main piece and one for this little tabby piece, okay? If we fit them all inside that box, we're able to fit all the textures within one. Now, if I just go to scale and I scale this down, whoopsie. There we go. So now this is super tiny, this fits here, and then this fits here, okay? So obviously these two things are in the same square. However, when I spin around, look at the size of the squares here and look at the size of the squares there. Does that break any one of our rules of UV mapping?
Yeah.
Rule number 2, right? Everything must be the same size, okay? Every square, I guess I should put square, right? Every square should be the same size, right? So how do we know this? Without guessing, how do we know what size these things should be? Well, Maya is actually pretty good at doing that part for us, okay? So I'm going to go to UV shell, I'm going to grab all the pieces, and I'm going to do shift right click. There are two things that we will use. I'm going to show you the first one. We don't need it for this one, but I'll show it to you anyway. The first one is going to be unfold. And you'll notice how I get to it is through this like secondary menu, okay? You just hold your mouse over that window and it jumps you into that secondary window. That'll get us to unfold, and we go to the option box. So now in here, let me reset this. The default settings should be good with the exception of this. We leave this as 4096, okay? So I'm just going to use my snipping tools. Grab that, then jump into OneNote, and just paste that right there and maybe shrink it down some. Okay. All right, so now I'm going to hit apply and close. Now what this did, it's kind of hard to see. Let me undo it and then redo it. There it goes. Okay, so it looks like we actually did need this a little bit. Okay, what it's doing is it's looking at all of the surfaces and trying to keep everything square. That's all it's doing. So it saw that in this shape, even though it looked square, on my screen and up here, it was a little bit off. And so that's fixing it. That's making everything look square. So we unfolded. It unfolds everything. And then the second thing we're going to do is layout UV. And the same thing, layout UV option box. Now this one has more settings that we have to change. So anytime we see a resolution, we're typing in 4096. This tells Maya, eventually I'm going to put a 4096 pixel image into this space. When I come down here to my pre-scaling, this will actually scale the stuff down. So this is what's going to make sure that as we hit this button, it scales everything proportionately. So if it scales this 50%, it scales that 50%. If it scales this 20%, it scales that 20%. Okay? If one of these is super small, it'll automatically make it the correct size so that all the squares on that piece are universal. Translate shells is default, so we can leave that on. Texture map size again, 4096. And then shell padding 5 and 5 should be good. Okay, so I'm going to make this bigger. I'm going to grab my clipping tool again. And I'm doing this for your benefit so you can see how I kind of take notes on things. Once you've done this a million times, you will have all these things memorized. I think there's even this drawing tool, so I can kind of point to things. There we go. And say, change this. And then change this. And then change these two. Change that. Cool. All right. So what is this going to do? So the packing resolution is basically going to take these items, however many we have selected, 2 in this case, and it's going to pack them. It's going to try to find the best spot for these items to be inside that square, and it's going to use this 4096 as an estimate as to what size texture we're going to put there. Okay. This preserve 3D ratios means that it's going to look at this surface here and make sure that we're not losing anything, that one piece doesn't get scaled down super tiny and the other one gets scaled up really big. That would be bad as well. Translate shells just means move them. Obviously rotate would rotate them as well. Typically you don't need to do that. Texture map size, again, 4096. And then we do this padding. So one is shell padding, which is, this is a shell, this is a shell. So the closest these will get is 5 pixels from each other. That's important because when we do a texture and we're painting, let's say, a blue line or something, we're dealing with pixels. So those pixels that we deal with right here, we don't want bleeding over into the other area where we don't want that to be blue. We want that to be red or something, okay? So we give it a little bit of a padding. The tile padding is the same thing, except for it's the tile right here. So it would be like this area, again, so we don't bleed over into another item. All right, there we go. So I'm going to hit layout. And now we play the waiting game. Boom, there it goes. So it found the best solution for where these 2 shapes would be, keeping them both square, laying them out into this arena. Notice how we have all of this space up here. This is wasted space. So regardless of what we do inside of any other program, we are going to be creating a perfectly square image, and that perfectly square image is going to be using this space as nothing, okay? So typically you want to pack your UVs as tight as possible. Even the space inside here, if you can fit a shape inside of that blank space, fit a shape inside the blank space. That's why I brought these other shapes in here, because each one of these can probably fit inside there and keep it as one texture. If I go here and I'm able to fit all of my shapes on one spot, I can make one texture and use that for the entire thing. That means that my game will run faster, my renderings will happen faster because I'm using one texture, not one for this, and one for that, okay? So now I'm going to lay out the UVs on this one. So using this, freeze transforms, delete history. So let's do that. Freeze transforms, delete history. Automatic mapping. Now this is going to go crazy, and then I'm going to undo it and do it a different way. Automatic mapping. This one broke this up into a whole bunch of different pieces. Okay? The kind of surface that this one is, it's going to, because there's faces basically facing every direction, and I have bevels on this, so if I were to zoom in real close, oops, we're too close there. You can see all these different faces right here are being separated from their main one, okay? So that's not going to work in this case. Like I said, we start with automatic, see what it gives us. Doesn't give us good results, then we switch. So in this case, I'm going to do planar mapping, okay? Cylinder, planar, or spherical. I don't think I've ever used spherical. Typically, I'm going to use planar or cylinder, and I'm going to just use planar on this. And I'm going to pick the X direction and planar. Okay? So that gave me this, which is pretty close to what I would need. Now, I can't really see it, but if I were to scale this up huge, when I get into some of these tighter areas right here, now it's actually doing a pretty good job there. Let's go this way. Yeah, there it is. So right here you can see how we're kind of like stretching and squashing some of those things. Okay? So in this case, I didn't end up using automatic mapping. Let's say if auto mapping, oops, doesn't do a good job, use something else. And typically it's going to be planar or cylindrical. That's probably like an indented one, right? Yeah, that's an A. Okay. So I did planar. This gave me a little bit better result, but I still need to fix it because I can't have that. So I'm going to go to my unfold, and I'm going to unfold it and see what happens. Options are the same. It saves the options, so 4096. Randomly, this will switch to legacy. Don't leave it on legacy. Use the unfold 3D. Okay, so that unfolded. Nope, it's still not doing it, okay? So very similar to the tissue box, sometimes you just need to start cutting stuff open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edge and I'm going to zoom in really close. Actually, I'm not even going to do that on that one. I think that one's going to be fine like that. It's going to have less resolution there, but I'm not going to be too concerned about it because I'm not going to see it too much. That's fine. So I unfolded it. It gave me not perfect results, but it gave me good enough for that kind of surface. Okay. This direction, it seems like it's doing pretty good. It's only when we're looking at it from this other direction upside down that we're kind of getting more of that look, and it's only in certain spots. Okay. Another indicator is if I go to view and I say UV distortion. If this was bright red, we would have some distortion issues. Let me grab some stuff and move it. Sorry, blue, it'll be distorted. Oh, there it is, red. Okay. So those are indicators that something is going on. This looks like it's fine, so I'm just going to leave it like that. Turn that back off. Another tool we'll use is orient. So this is kind of like crooked a little bit to the side. So if I say orient, let's go back to UV shell. Oh, it's thinking. Sorry. Sorry, Maya. Let's go back to UV shell, click on it, go to orient. There it goes. It'll straighten it out. Okay. So let's check it out and see. So it looks like we have squares. Like I said, there's a couple spots where maybe they're not squares, but those aren't really critical spots for what we're doing. Like right here, that's probably a bad thing that it's doing that. But I'm probably not going to even see that, so I'm not too concerned with it. Okay. To fix it, I would actually go through and start breaking this up. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to be too concerned with it on that shape. All right, so that one's good. I'm going to go back here to layout, and then lay it out. It's pretty square, so it should fit inside that area. Okay. So froze transforms, delete the history. This didn't work, so I did planar. We didn't need to combine any pieces. Orient if needed. And I also put in here unfold UV and layout UV. Those are the two that typically we will use. Okay. So that piece is good. I'm going to go down to this piece, do the same thing, UV, automatic. Okay, now this one here, we're getting the same kind of thing where it's breaking this up into different sections. If you look at the white areas here, if I move my mouse away, where we see those white lines, that's where it's cutting it. So it cut it right here, it cut it right there. Sometimes it's easier to just do these in sections. So everything that's facing this direction here, I'm going to grab. So that one, and then I think this one too is also facing that direction. Okay, so all of these are facing the same direction. I'm going to go and grab this and do planar map. I could do automatic and I think it would work, but I think planar is just good just to keep it off there. And I'm going to shuffle it off to the side. And then the rest of this, I'm going to try to marquee it right here. And then if I go to wireframe, you can see what I have, just these edges on the inside. They're already laid out. They're already just like sitting there. They just need to be connected somehow. So I'm going to go to edges, and then I have to look at the best way to do this. So if I click on this edge here and do the move and sew, there's another edge. If I click on this edge and move and sew, did it work? No, it did. It just put it on top of it. Okay. We'll address that after we're done. So move and sew this, move and sew this, move and sew that, move and sew that. Okay, so now this piece right here is this band going around it right there. Okay, all stitched together, all sewn up. Same thing here. This is the band right here on the outside, all stitched up. Now if I go back to my shell, I grab all the pieces, and then I do my unfold. There it goes. And then I do my orient. And then I do my layout. The layout is going to try to make sure everything stays the same square size. Okay? So if I have pieces that are really thin and long, they have to fit inside that square, so it's going to shrink those down, and then everything else is going to be relating to that. Okay? So these pieces right here are pretty big, but they're pretty small on here. And then these ones are pretty long and skinny, and I'm wasting a whole lot of texture space. Okay, so I'm going to grab these again. I'm going to automatic mapping. You don't need to do anything special. You just automatic it and leave it do its thing. And then instead of them being up there, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to grab, let's say, that edge. Yep, that'll work. And then I'm going to move and sew. And I'm going to go to this edge and move and sew. Go to this edge, move and sew. Now it's going crazy right now. That's fine. I'm just going to let it go crazy. Because when I grab this and then do unfold, now it'll look nice and neat. So you can see here, those are those edges. Now I wouldn't go into this. If I go over this edge, that's the corner. I don't want to sew those together because then it'll be unnatural. It'll be just like this box if I tried to take basically like this side, and this side, and flatten that out. I need to cut along that edge, and then it works. So I'm going to do the same thing on the other one. So I'm just going to grab the outside shell. Is that one? That's not one. This one? Yep. And I'm going to move and sew that. Grab the UV shell, unfold it. Okay, so now I have everything together. Now watch how much better this is when I unfold everything. Reorient it. I don't really like how that one's rotated the other way, so I'm going to fix that way. And then orient it. Now if I grab everything and do my layout, we're going to get a much better layout than we had a second ago. Okay? Because now we have these shapes that are pretty much square, pretty much the same size, all filling that little box. Okay, now these are pretty straightforward as far as like laying these out. I'm kind of walking through the thought process as I go on these, but as I'm doing them, I'm just going in there and saying I'm going to automatic map it, and then I'll stitch everything together. Okay, so when I do something like this is typically what I'll do. This piece is done, but just so you can see what it's going to look like when I do it, is I would automatic. I would then unfold. I would then lay out. It's still thinking. There we go. Okay, and that piece is there. All right, so I'm going to actually cut this up. So I'm going to grab this edge, this edge, this edge, that edge, this edge, and I'm going to shift right click and do cut. And now all these pieces are cut from each other. Then I can go to unfold, then I can go to layout. And now I can just kind of move stuff around just to get it away from each other. There we go. And this one is kind of wonky because I missed an edge. Let me just recut that one. There we go. Okay, and then I'm just going to go in here to these edges and then move and sew. And then go to these edges and move and sew. And then grab all the pieces, unfold it, orient them, and then lay them out. Whoops. There we go. Okay, so once you've done this a bunch of times, the process becomes a lot quicker, a lot easier to manage. Okay, so this piece, and this piece are all done. Okay, I've laid out the UVs for all three of these. All of these are stacked on top of each other. If I brought this into Substance, it would freak out. I'm going to go to UV shell. I'm going to grab everything, and I'm just going to lay out the UVs. And now what this is going to do is take all three of those UVs and fit them into the square. There we go. Now this is my opportunity to kind of look at pieces and see if I could cut something further. Obviously I have some wasted space right here, some wasted space right there. Sometimes you literally can't, like I can't get, if I got these two bigger, this wouldn't fit on the screen. But sometimes if you rotate, like this, or even this piece, let's say I rotated that piece, and then I oriented them, and then I grabbed everything and then did a layout again. Think of it like a puzzle, kind of fitting these pieces together to best fit inside that square. All right, that's pretty close, or pretty much better. I think I can just swap these manually just to feel a little bit better on that. Okay, I can move them around manually. The first step is just to orient, get it lined up. So that's pretty good. So I'm wasting a little space here, wasting a little space right there. For the most part, everything is kind of lined up where I need it to be. Cool. Okay, so now before I go into Unreal or Substance with these, let me do one more piece just so you can see how I would do it. Okay, so I'm going to take this arm, that piece there. I'm going to isolate it. Oops, not yet. I'm going to move the pivot first. Okay, now this is a piece that is not locked to any grid. This is basically like wherever I feel like putting it. But I still want to put the pivot in a friendly spot. So a friendly spot is right here at the bottom. This is where it should connect to the next piece. So if I hold down D and, oops, so I have to grab all the pieces individually. So let me grab all the pieces individually. There we go. Then hold down D and C. I can middle drag right there, and now the pivot is right there at the bottom. Okay, then I can hold down D and just kind of slide it over a bit more. There we go. Okay, so now when I start bringing this into Unreal, it's simply a matter of moving it, and it should line right up to that grid. Okay, so now I can take this, use my X key, whoop, freeze my transforms. Oops, what am I forgetting? Oh, this is inside of a group. It doesn't like being inside of a group, so I'm just going to Shift P to pull it out of the group. Then if I move this, yeah, everything moves together there. Yep, there we go. Perfect. So it's right there at the origin. Now I can do my freeze transform. Now I can do my delete history. And then I'm going to start breaking these apart one at a time. Okay, so a piece like this, each one of these need to be separately done. I'll do this one first. So I grab that, I go to my UV editor. First, you can tell they're pretty not laid out right. So I'm going to go to UV automatic. This does get broken up into a lot of pieces. So I just go to my edge. Typically I find holes. So like right here there's a hole. So I'm going to try to put that back together. There we go. Here's another one. I think this one, I just want to break it apart. So I'm just going to right click and cut. And then go to shell. Nope, that's still connected somewhere down the line here. There it is. Cut this, go to shell, there we go. So that's a separate piece now. It was kind of overlapping, so I didn't want that. That's good. Okay, so now I have some other random pieces down here. There we go. You'll see they're kind of like twisted, which is kind of weird how it laid it out. And I'm moving these manually. You don't need to do that. I just need to grab one of the edges and figure out where it goes. Now it should highlight where it goes. There it is. And if I were to zoom in on this piece and grab this side, I wonder if it would grab the other edge. Let's see. Yep, it did. Okay, so let's move and sew that. And move and sew that. All right, so that's all knocked in there really good. Let's do the same thing on this one. This piece and this piece, maybe those go together up here. Yep. And then same thing here, move and sew that. Okay, now this one, there's no real like easy, pretty looking thing that we're going to have. They're just going to be kind of wonky because of the shape of it. So I'm just going to let it be wonky. Even these, I might be able to click on one of these edges here and put it somewhere, but I believe these are these faces on the side. Yeah, so this is that. So I could grab one of these and move and sew, and it'll go there. But I think I'm just going to leave them. Okay, so that's that one piece. Then I would go to this piece and do the same thing. Now here I'm going to do a different setup. I'm going to go, instead of automatic, I'm going to go to planar. And what this does is it just gives it like blanket, like everything's connected, everything's together. And then I can go into my edges and start breaking this apart. So this, there we go. So I grab that edge all the way around and I'm going to cut it. And I put a bevel on here, and if I go to the center line of that bevel, it makes it really easy just to go through and grab all these center lines for that bevel and then just cut it right there. Okay, now I'm not going to do the whole thing because this will take me a little bit longer, but then I would go through and unfold it, and then I would get that shape. Then I would do the same thing to this piece, breaking it up into individual pieces. So I would treat this cylinder as a planar right here. So let me grab these, and I would go into planar, set this to the Z direction, and that's perfect. And then grab these pieces here. I don't need that. And then I would do, let's say, a cylindrical projection. Oops, I think I grabbed some pieces down here too. I would do a cylindrical projection. Now this is a different kind of manipulator. If you click on the T, click on the rotator, and rotate it, it becomes much nicer. Okay, I'm going to go to edge. I think that needs to merge. There we go. Okay, so the more you do these things, each piece is going to be different. You'll find that it just becomes easier and easier to do. Okay, so those pieces are good there. This is other stuff. Okay. At the very least, doing automatic, going through edges, stitching them together, the most straightforward way. Okay, so that's how I would do a piece like that. All right, so now let's take this piece and get it out of here. Okay, so I need to take this and send it out. So I'm going to delete history again. I'm going to unparent everything, make sure it's all unparented, and then freeze my transforms one more time, and then delete history one more time. Okay, I want everything to be clean inside there. That's good. Now, something to consider, do I want this to come into the game as one piece, or do I want it to come in as separate elements? If I bring it in as separate elements, I could assign different materials to different pieces. If I want them to come in as one big piece, it simplifies that process, but I can't do as many different things. Okay, so if I wanted this to be, let's say, glass, and then this to be metal, and this to be wood, for instance, I would want to have these as 3 separate pieces. If I want them to come in all as one piece, then I could go up to mesh combine and put them all as one piece. I want to make sure I remove the pivot, not remove it, but put it down there. I'm going to leave them as separate pieces. Okay, so I'm going to export this out, and I'm going to save it into my scenes, and I'm going to save it as an FBX. Okay, an FBX is a universal format. It'll go between pretty much any 3D software. You can actually put animations in there too. We're not going to get there yet, so I'm going to say wall detail side 0, 1. This is actually 0, 2. We'll get some options. If you're in Maya 2019, you shouldn't have any issue going to FBX 2019. At one point, there was issues going with, I think, 2018 or 2016, 17. One of those was some issues. So as long as you're on 2019, you should be good. We don't need animation. We don't need cameras. It doesn't have them anyway, so it's not going to bring everything out there. Same thing with lights. There we go. So I'm going to say export, and now it's gone. So now it's exported out to my folder. So now I can go into Substance, and I'm going to make a new project. So the way Substance opens up, there's a tutorial screen, and then you just start with a new project. I'm going to find my geometry by clicking that select button. There's my geometry, and I'm going to hit open. Then I need to pick where I'm going with this. So depending on if we're rendering this out, if we're sending it to a gaming engine, if we're doing whatever with it, it wants to know. We also have the option for Unity and Unreal. We are going to Unreal, so I'm going to leave this as Unreal. We don't need cameras, so we can check that off, not that they're even there. And then it wants to know our document resolution. So if you're in Photoshop and you draw something at a 6x6 inch item, 300 dots per inch, and then later on you decide you want this bigger, you can rescale it, but nothing resizes correctly, right? So if I took a small image and resize it, it just stretches everything out or figures out how it's supposed to go. In Substance, you can actually work at a smaller size, and then when you're done, it can resize it and keep all the detail that you have, okay? So depending on what you want to do, typically if you work at 2048, you're fine. I'm going to work at 4096 just so I can see all the detail. A piece like this, not a big deal. A big robot, many different textures going on, yes, that'll be a huge deal. So 4096, and then I hit OK. I want to discard my changes there. All right, so just a little quick tour of the interface. This is the 3D side. I don't know what happened. Oh, I do know what happened there. I have to fix that. And then this is the 2D side. Okay, so these are my UVs. This is the 3D side. I'm getting some weird display here. This grate, if I turn my two-sided lighting off, you'll see is black. Okay, when I extruded it, it went inside out. So I'm going to go to Mesh Display and say Reverse. Oops. I mean to grab everything. I just wanted that. There we go. And then I'm going to grab all the pieces again, re-export this out again. Go back to there, hit yes, hit export. Options are saved, so I don't need to change the options again. And then I'm just going to go to edit project configuration and then just reload in that detail. There we go. So now I have that piece nice and solid. Okay. Settings are the same. So as I Alt drag around here, just like Maya, Alt middle mouse button, left mouse button, right mouse button, Alt middle. Over here, I have my layers. Your layout may be different. So don't be concerned about the specific where my items are. Just look for the Layers tab, look for the Texture Settings tab, look for the Properties tab, and just focus on those. So before I get into any kind of material on this, I'm going to go to my Texture Settings tab and take a look here. So we're going to be creating a base color, a height map, a roughness map, a metallic map, and a normal map. Now what those items are different ways to make our item feel more realistic. So if I wanted to add a bump to it, that's where the height and the normal map are going to come in. If I wanted one spot to be very rough, I can pull the roughness up. If I want one spot to be very shiny, I can pull the metallic up and lower the roughness. Okay, we'll play with those. If you have other channels, you can actually add them here. So if you're like, oh, I want to have an area of this that'll be glossy, or an area that'll have emission to it. So I want to I have a control panel. I want these lights to be on there. I may have an emission area that I would use. Okay. So these are the defaults. We're fine with those. I'm going to go down to the bottom where we see these mesh maps, and I'm going to say bake. And the only options we need to change in here is our output size is 4,000, and our use low poly mesh, check on, and then we say bake. Now what this is going to do is it's going to actually go through and bake the textures or bake details about our textures into starter maps basically. So my substance wants to know where is the curvature of the surface, where are objects close together, and that's what it's doing now. It's generating all these maps that we can use to create really cool textures for it. So the higher the resolution, the longer it's going to take. So we did 4096. Our surfaces are pretty simple, so we shouldn't see too much of a slowdown. But if we did, let's say you brought your building in here, there'd be a lot more texture resolution, a lot more things going on. We have a lot more of that. You brought your mechanical one in there, lots of pieces, same thing. It would be a long process for this. And what's cool, you can take these maps and use them as low res, come back in like right before you're done, generate some high res ones, and then you're good. It'll all update everything that you're using. So there is our maps, okay? So this generates, you can see it already has some kind of shading to it. We're seeing some ambient occlusion locked into this. We're also seeing some, it's not really anything else really. The ambient occlusion is the main one. Okay, so we're pretty much done with this texture settings tab for now. I don't need to see that anymore. I'm just going to throw it down the bottom here and then make that bigger. There we go. Okay. So a couple areas we need to focus on. Number one is layers. They work exactly like Photoshop works, okay? This is a mask, so if you want to put masks on stuff, you can put masks on stuff, just like Photoshop. You want a flat layer that you want to paint on, that's what that is. If you want a fill layer, that's what that is, okay? So, and then these are other things that you could add, the smart materials and whatnot. So I'm going to start off first with a base material down here, okay? So this is my shelf. I'm going to find something that is kind of similar to what I'm going for. You can also type in here, so you can type in, base. I guess they're all base, aren't they? I forget which one I had before. Pebbles, Smart Scratch Thin. Let's do a silicone coat one, okay? So the way I apply it is I just literally drag this either onto the surface or I drag it onto layer one. And this will automatically fill this. You can see the progress bar there. It'll automatically fill it with that material. Okay, now that's a starting point. If I go into this area here, you'll see I have a fill layer. That's what the little paint bucket means. And if I go into the property area, this is how that material is being placed on here. So it's hard to see, I'm sure, but I'm going to change the color of this. So I'm going to go down to the main color and just choose something a bit brighter. So I'm going to go up to like white. It's again updating. There it goes. And so now we can see that. If I don't want this texture on here, maybe I'll take the, let's see, height range, no. Let's take the scale of the UVs up to, let's say, 10. Okay, let's say 30. There we go. So now if we look close, we can see a lot of detail right inside there, kind of like this is a graininess, like for roller paint, right? If you look close to a wall, you'll see that kind of dottiness. If you look close to these walls, you'll see kind of like pits and stuff. I may not want that at all. I may not like this texture. I think I can delete that there. Yeah, there we go. And I've deleted that, so there is no texture. It's just a flat color right now, okay? Or I can take the layer and put it in the trash can and get rid of it. This is what I started off with, just a basic plastic. Drop that on. And then change the color here from blue to white. That's the color I wanted to go with. Now we can look at this and we can see the shininess of it. All the stuff that we're doing has options over here. So right now this one layer is giving us color, roughness, and metal. If I come down to roughness and I lower the roughness, it'll be very shiny, very reflective. You can see it right there. There's some reflection happening right there. If I take the metallic up, now we're getting this into more of, this is chrome or something, okay? Now I'll pull the roughness up. Now we have that sharp reflection, but now it's diffused. It's like spread out. So we still get that reflection, but it's just like spread. So we're getting less color, more reflection. So typically you're going to play with these and try to find like a happy medium to kind of start with. That seems decent. Then I'm going to make a new layer. So I'm just going to click the new layer button. I'm going to go over here to my other things and I'm going to find textures, no, alphas, there we go. So these are black and white images. You can use Photoshop, you can make your own, you can use Illustrator. Anything to create a black and white image, you can make any one of these. So if you have your own icons you want to add to stuff or whatever, feel free. Go into the program, create them, save them out as a ping. And then if you go to import, file, import resources, you can actually import a black and white image and use it for any one of those items, okay? So for this, I want to find a specific thing here. So I'm going to go that. That feels like, I don't know, maybe that one might be good. This is the substance S. It's a giveaway use substance. There we go. Here's the warning signs. I'm going to use this one. This is the sign for a laser. All right, so I click on it and you'll see now my brush is this. Same hotkeys as Photoshop, so you can use the brackets to make this bigger or smaller. My color is right here, so I can pick a different color. I'm going to turn my perspective off, so I'm done with my, I'm going to keep this as orthographic, there we go. And that way it won't distort it. And I just click, there we go. So you'll see it clicks here, it drops the texture on the surface, and then it goes over here and puts the texture right on my UVs. And you can paint on either side. If I wanted to, I can go here, make this a bit smaller, and go, and now I have one right there. So you can paint on either side, so that makes it easier for you. Even if you had something that was going to span several of these, like this, doesn't look perfect, but it did put that texture over all those pieces. Okay, and which is something that you can't do with Photoshop. You can't paint across surfaces like that. I'm going to hit undo. I'm also going to delete this layer. Okay. Now, if I wanted to change color on something afterwards, I basically have to undo it, redo it, whatever. That's where these fill layers come in. So think of this as like this layer is now filled with this color, so red. Okay. If I put a mask on this and say it's going to be black, then I go and grab my image here. What would white on a black mask do in Photoshop?
Oh, it would bring the image back.
Right, it would reveal it, right?
Yeah.
So basically we have red over this entire thing with a black mask. So if I were to paint white on that black mask, it's going to pull that color out, right? So boom, there it is. Now this is the benefit of using the fill layer, is that if I click on this, I can change this to whatever color I want after the fact, okay? The other one, it's basically like a paintbrush where I'm painting those pixels right on top of it. So if I decide later I'd want to choose a different color, I can do that very quickly with this, okay? Now other stuff we may want to add to this, you may want to add some noise or something like that. I'm going to add another fill layer right there. I'm going to give this kind of a noisy or a dirty color, so let's say that this is, I don't know, let's go to this area, let's go to that area, there we go. So that feels dirty. I'm going to make a different mask. So I'm going to come down here, and way down at the bottom-ish, they have these things called smart masks, okay? When we started the program, we hit bake materials over here. It's down here. Get up there. Bake mesh maps. It figured out stuff about the surface. These are using that information, okay? So if I go here and I say that I wanted to do, let's say this one, that one. Let's say this one, okay? So I'm just going to drag this onto my fill layer. And what it's going to do is anywhere there's cavities, it's going to apply that mask to it. Just apply it. Now this saves us from having to go through and actually like paint in all this different kind of dirt. Now, oops, I rotated that. Now as I look around this, you can see how Uh-oh. Oh, this happened last time too, dang it. Let's drop that back on here. There we go. All right, let me save this real quick. Wall detail. Oops. And then let's close that one and then reopen it. I don't know if it's my video card, the version, whatever it is, but something's causing it to randomly kind of create this like garbled mess on top of it. Now that file is actually saving all the information into that substance file. So you'll see those file sizes for just this texture for one item might be like 100 megabytes, a gig, something like that. There we go. All right, so now if we look at this, we can definitely see there's more detail to it. I'm gonna really give it some more contrast. I'm gonna go to the fill layer, go down to this, really give it some darkness. Now it looks kind of really, really grungy, and we didn't do anything. All we did was pick a color, drop a smart mask on it, and it did the rest. It finds where the crevices are, it finds where those dark spots are. And on each one of these, if I click on this mask, I click on my mask editor, and you have to forgive, everything is squished on here because I'm projecting it, but I can basically play with the balance of this. So I can actually pull some of this off. At 4096, it's going slow. If I had a different resolution, this would go a bit faster. It's thinking, it's thinking. There we go. Let's just drop that there for a second. Let me find my document size. All right, so I'm lowering my document resolution just so as I play with this, it goes a bit quicker. There we go. Okay, so now we can see very quickly we can adjust what this is looking like. We can also pull the contrast back or pull the contrast up, or we can play with the amount of texture that's inside there or whatever. And you'll see even on here it looks really cool where everywhere we have these things that are touching or at these corners, it's creating this really cool noise pattern. I'm going to really lower this down. This layer has an opacity. I'm just going to pull it down to like that. Okay, so there's still some noise there. It's not perfect, but that'll work. Okay, so I'm going to pretend that I'm done with that item, and I'm just going to save it, and then I'm going to export my textures out. By default, it's going to go into the base color, occlusion, normal, emissive, and it's going to be whatever size I've set my document to. So I'm going to hit cancel for a second. I'm going to find my texture set list. I'm going to right click and then change a name. So this is going to be sidewall. Okay, this will give us a different name so that when we export it out, it makes a little bit more sense. Back to export. Now it says sidewall details. Everything otherwise would be called Lambert 1, Lambert 1, Lambert 1. This is where it's going to go. So I'm going to take this and save it into my folder. Environment, images. I'm going to make a new folder in here and call it textures. And make a new folder in here and then call this sidewall. Okay. Tell it what size I want this to be, 4000. And then hit export. Okay. So now what this is doing is it's going through and it's rendering out the color channel, rendering out the ambient occlusion, rendering out the roughness, the metallic, and creating a texture for each one of those things. Everything that makes a video game look the way it does is all of those maps plus more stuff, okay? So we can't just rely on simple color because we need all this other stuff to happen. All right, so that's good there. Now I'm gonna go into Unreal and bring this in. Question, ma'am? Nope, same exact settings. It's looking at still the distance. So we didn't get into that, which we will later. When we do these baked mesh maps, ambient occlusion is one of these. So you'll see this is the amount of rays. These are the distances, same thing we will play with in Maya, and then this is the spread on it. No, because we're not going back to the Maya one. This is like gonna bake the ambient occlusion into the texture. okay, and use that for part of how it does its stuff. So I'm going to exit this. And I'm going to open up, it's Epic Games is what it is on the systems, and then I'm going to hit launch. When you download this, it'll be whatever. Sometimes you'll get a login screen, you just hit skip or come back later to it. And then typically you're going to get this screen here, okay? I recommend using either the first person, which is you'll get a gun with this one that you can shoot stuff, so you can actually take some of your props and make them dynamic and knock them down if you want. I don't really like that for gaming. Personally, it annoys me. I like the third person, okay? So I'm going to pick third person. This is going to go to a desktop or console. This is going to be maximum quality. And then I don't want any starter content, and I'm just going to put this into my folder. I recommend wherever your Maya project is, put it inside there, okay? That way everything is nice into one folder. Fall 20 gaming. So I'm going to use this gaming folder, and then I'm going to call this Sarcona Gaming ENV Unreal. Oops, too long. I guess I don't need to put Unreal because it's already there, right? And then hit create. So what this is going to do is it's going to create a template. It's going to here's all the starter stuff that you need to get this thing off the ground. This is what it's going to create. This file alone will get bigger and bigger and bigger the more stuff we add to it, okay? So controls are pretty straightforward. If you've ever played a video game on your computer, you can hit play, and then you use your arrow to move around, and then you use the WASD to have the character walk forward, sideways, backwards, and then spacebar is jump. Yes, sir. Yeah, yep, everything is customizable, so you could do that, yep. All right, so a couple areas we need to play with. Right here, this is where we're bringing all of our stuff in. Very easy to get disorganized, very easy to get our stuff just all over the place. So I'm going to create a new folder, and this is going to be geometry. I'm going to create another new folder, and this is going to be materials. Okay, so all my geometry goes in the geometry folder, all my materials go in the materials folder, okay? In my geometry, I'm going to import my pieces of geometry. So I need to find where I put them in scenes. All right, so I'm going to bring in my monitor, my detail side, and my wall divider. Those are ones I already set up, already have ready to go. Same process I've laid out. Open. Everything should be good. My scale inside of Unreal, or in Maya, is the same as my scale in Unreal. Hit import all. You typically get pop-ups. You can just ignore the pop-ups for now. Here's Lambert 1, here's Lambert 2, here's a bunch of just different pieces. Because I exported these out as individual pieces, I get individual pieces here. Had I done a combine, then each one of those files could have been like one piece inside here, okay? So, wall detail, wall detail, wall detail, wall divider, there we go. So we're gonna do the wall divider first because that's only one item, okay? So let me jump back to this. Let me go into my materials, and I'm gonna import all my materials for these things. So I put those inside of source images, I lied, images, textures, oh, there it is. Assets. Wall divider. There we go. So there's my wall divider materials. You'll get this. Just hit OK. And I'm going to import the next ones. You can divide these even further if you want. Like have a folder inside folders to keep those things organized. Think of a video game. Every single asset you have, all the different stuff. It's very... a lot of things, a lot of textures, okay? And then I'll import the last one, which is my my monitor. You'll see this one has a lot more, and I'll show you why when we get to it. Okay, so these are the textures I'm bringing in. Just like we would have inside of Maya, we have individual textures for all the things. We have to then create materials and map these textures onto the materials. I don't know why that one's taking so long. Just wait for it, I guess. Yes, I know. Yes, I know. All right, there we go. All right. So now I'm going to make materials. So I'm going to right click and go to material. And I'll start off with that divider. So I'll call this wall divider. Now a common thing you'll see inside of Unreal is they'll put a letter, an underscore, and then whatever the name is. So this is a material. So typically we're going to start off with an M underscore and then the name of it, wall divider. Okay? Other stuff you'll see, like geometry, we could put a G there, but we don't need to. I'm going to double click the wall divider. This will bring up something that will scare you, but it's fine. It's very simple. Left click does selection, right click does this. Okay? I need to bring in everything for my wall divider. So these things here, these three things are wall divider stuff, so I just drag them into that window. And if you remember Nuke, all node-based stuff, right? So I'm going to just spread these apart a little bit. Now, they've labeled it perfectly so that it's easy to see. This one right here, which is white, if I go down here, it says base color. If I look over here at the material, base color. So I'm going to connect this RGB to the base color. Okay? If I go to this one, which is this bluish color, this one says normal. If I go over here, that says normal. So I connect the RGB to the normal. If I click on this one, this is probably the more confusing one. This one has a really long name. So this one is called occlusion, roughness, and metallic. Okay? Instead of us getting 3 different files for metallic, roughness, and occlusion, it puts all of those into one file. Okay? And uses the red, green, and blue as different channels for each. They're in order, so occlusion is always going to be red. Green is going to be roughness, and then blue is going to be metallic. Once you've done this 3 times, every item you do, same exact process, this same exact setup, just using different files, obviously, it becomes a lot easier. Okay, so we hit save. We wait, and we close. There we go. I'm going to go back to my third person here, go back to my geometry. Here's my wall divider, so I'm just going to drag this into my scene. And if you hit F, Alt, left mouse button, Alt middle, or right mouse button, Alt middle, so those are the same. Over here on the side, I can pick my material. And this is why I use that M underscore, because now you can see there's the wall divider right under M underscore wall divider. And there it is. Okay? Now I'm going to do the next ones. So I'm going to go back to my materials, go back to a new material, M underscore wall detail. Open this up. I wish it wouldn't maximize all the time. Grab the ones that say wall detail next to them. Remember I said we want to rename them in Substance so we don't have Lambert 1 for all of them? That's why, because we'd have no idea what they were called. Okay? So which one do you think is going to be my color? Yeah, this one here. I did a white theme on there, so that one's pretty obvious. I can double check it. It does say base color. Which one of these am I going to grab? RGB, and connect it to base color. Okay, which one is this one? Normal, yep, so I'm going to grab the RGB, go to normal. And which one is this one? Yep, occlusion, roughness, metallic. Always that order. So red goes to occlusion, roughness, metallic. Hit save. Wait, and then we close. And then while I'm here, I'm just going to make 2 more materials, M underscore screen, and M underscore screen arm. Okay, so screen, monitor screen. Oops. Screen holder, there we go, screen holder and screen holder. And again, same process. Give it a second to upload. And then base color, normal, occlusion, roughness, metallic. Hit save. Hit close. Now we do the same thing for the screen. You get the idea. And nobody corrected my spelling on this. Materials, there we go. That makes more sense. Yeah, I can barely read it. Now, sometimes you will get an error that will pop up that'll say updating shading list or something like that. I don't know what it's doing. It's updating the shading list, and it might take like 10 minutes to do. Just let it do its thing. Regardless of whether we have a texture on something or not, it still has to have the UVs laid out, because Unreal works by baking in lighting, baking in textures into all of our surfaces. All right, so geometry, there we go. Okay, so wall divider is pretty straightforward. We had one shape, no big deal. The other pieces are all separate, okay? So I need to make a blueprint, and a blueprint is kind of like a definition of what that surface is gonna look like. So this is gonna be an actor, is what they call it. And I'm gonna call it BP underscore wall detail. Okay, there's that letters at the beginning and then the underscore. I'll make another one, actor, and I will call this one BP underscore monitor. Okay, so let me go into the wall detail. Let me shrink that down. Okay, there's a little circle right here. You can ignore the circle. I'm just gonna go and find my wall detail pieces right here, here, and here, and I just drag them in. Now it should, if I've set this up right, there we go, it should come in with that corner locked to exactly where I was inside of Unreal, or inside of Maya. In this case it did. When I demoed it here, I put the thing over there, but that's not a big deal. Cool, so now I'm gonna come down here to my material, and I'm gonna pick from this list and say M underscore wall detail. Make sure I grab all the pieces and do that to them. This one, M underscore wall detail, grab this piece. There we go. Hit compile, hit save, hit close. Okay. Let me do the same thing for the arm. So BP monitor, grab all the monitor pieces, drag that into the list. They should show up there. Okay, it automatically places them in the order or whatever in the correct spot. And then we'll grab all of these, go down to material, and then change this to screen arm, and this one to screen. Okay, now this one, because I was inside Maya and I had two different things, we'll get more into this. I assigned the screen a different material so that I can come into here and give it a different material look altogether. So we'll get more into that. So I'm just going to save and close. Okay, so now I'm going to have these BP monitor and BP detail and just drag those into the scene. And now I can use this as my way to move this around. So I'm going to add a couple of these. This is my, like, call it a sandbox, whatever you want. This is kind of like the starting point. You can delete walls if you want, you know, have your guy start over there. Notice the scale is pretty good. Like what I had in Maya translated. So I got at least that right. Oops, I can't have that just stick off because it'll fall. But let's go back here. Let's hold, come on. There we go. I'm going to hold control and, not control, hold alt and then drag a copy over. And as long as I've snapped my stuff correctly, I should be able to line it up pretty good, okay? You'll see there is a little bit of overlap here. In this specific file, I was actually just a hair off. Okay, so when I snap that alignment, that's why I wanted to show it, you can see that it doesn't snap perfectly inside here. So I would need to go back into Maya, nudge it over a little bit, re-export it, and then it'll be good. For now, I'm just going to throw it right there. I'm going to hold down Alt, drag another copy. Hold down Alt, drag another copy. Oops. Sometimes it doesn't work. You just hit undo and then redo it. There's no easy way. This is one of the things that's kind of missing from here is the ability to just, like, you know, repopulate the entire thing with it. There we go. So now I'm going to take this wall divider Just drag that to the middle. Make sure it's lined up perfectly. It's almost there. There we go. And then hold down Alt. Hold down Alt, drag it over. Hold down Alt again, drag it over. So you can see why we did these little modules. It makes it a lot easier when we get here. We've only textured one, we set it up, boom, it's good to go. And this is a lot less weight on Unreal versus importing that entire long wall with all the stuff in there. We could also change different textures. Obviously, we didn't get into everything. But these things here that are red, I could have those be a different color per thing if I wanted to. These things that say security, I could swap those out and have security, fire assistance, whatever. I can put different names on each one. Here is my wall monitor. So drop that into the scene. And then slide this. Now this lines up with the plate here. I just want to get this. The controls take a second just to like reacclimate yourself. There we go. So that's lined up good. Scoot this over a smidge. You can see it snapping. And then do the same thing. Alt, drag it to this one. Alt, drag it to that one. And then even those screens, I could have a video play on each screen if I wanted to. If I brought a video into Unreal, as the person walks by, I can have them trigger and have a video being played. It's really unlimited as to what you want to do with it. Super powerful. Then when I'm ready, I hit play, and now I can walk around my scene. Okay, obviously I would bring everything in here. I'd bring the floor in here. I'd bring the ceiling in here, all my cabling. But the process, regardless if you have 2 items or 100 items, is the exact same thing. It's bringing in these little modules, duplicating them, and then making sure they work. And that seems to be working pretty good. It is a bit grainy on this. I think I have to turn one of my settings up. You'll see from the back it looks horrible because it's see-through. We don't have a thickness there. And that's fine because we're only going to see it from this one side. Okay, so the rest of this is the same thing. I go through my Maya scene, unhide that. Maybe I'll grab this wall. I'll find out where that section is where I can cut it off. I'll cut it. I'll make it the same exact size as this other wall here. And then I'll UV map it, send it into Substance, do all the stuff there, send that out, go into Unreal, and place it. I'll do the same thing with the ceiling. I'll do the same thing with the floor. If I need lights, there are lights right here. So you just drag it into the scene, scoochy it up. You can rotate it. Way over here on the side, this is where all your items live. So your outliner basically inside of Unreal is right here. And again, you can customize everything. You don't want that sky, there's an option to change what sky is there, what time of day it is, the darkness that we're getting inside here. You can put a dome around the entire thing and basically shut out the entire setup if you wanted. Okay, you can make stuff explode.